Hello. Hello and welcome to Coproduce Care's first live stream. As many of you will know who are joining, I'm no way to see. Actually, I can see, yes. So there's 11 of you, 12 of you, 13 more people are coming in. This is great news. My name is Sophie Chester-Glyn. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a care provider, so part of a care organisation, but also recently I set up Coproduce Care. And the whole aim of Coproduce Care is to help widen up the debate around health and social care. So classically, if you know anything about Coproduce Care, you'll see that we blog, we vlog, and we have a lot of videos on YouTube. If you've connected to our YouTube channel, please do the usual, subscribe, like, share. But afterwards, if you want to hear interviews from anyone from Skills for Care, from Care England, if you know these names, then you'll know people like Martin Green, and if you don't, then have a look and see what you can find. But what we've decided to do now, instead of pre-recorded videos, we want to trial doing live stream. So this is our first live stream, and we're very much aware that the tech might not be great because this is the first one we're doing. And I'm delighted to have some fantastic guests with me today. So I've got David Smallacombe and Deian Glyn from Care and Support West, which is a care association based in the West, so covering areas like Bristol, Bain, South Gloucestershire, North Somerset, and they support people, providers really, to have their voices heard. They also do some fantastic things around an award ceremony every year to honour care workers and care providers and all of the wonderful people who do amazing things in care. If you're in care, you know what you do, and you'll know that you put out a lot to do what you do. So the stuff that Care and Support West do in honouring care workers is amazing. And they'll talk more about that later. So a few things I just want to mention is that this is going to be a string of series of live streams, hopefully. And I'll talk about it at the end, but just to let you know, tomorrow we're going to be doing one at 7 o'clock called Chat for Care. And we're hoping to run it every Thursday, and we're going to be talking to different people who are involved in care. So tomorrow we'll be talking to Belinda Schwer, and she's part of a charity called Cascada, and she's very passionate. If you know Belinda, she's extremely passionate about the Care Act, and it's very legal, but it's important because the government has brought out a new piece of legislation about a month ago now called the Corona Act. I think that's right. And basically it changes the duties that local authorities have under the Care Act. If you don't know what I'm talking about, tune in. If you subscribe and click on the bell, if you're on YouTube, and you'll get a notification about when it starts. But the idea is that we will chat about the Care Act easements. And we'll finish hopefully 3 minutes before 8, so we can run outside and clap for our carers at 8 on Thursday. But on to today. If you want to comment, please do. I want this to be really interactive so that we can have a chat with people. So use the chat box. Let us know that it's working. It's our first live stream, so I don't see what you see. So let us know if you can't hear anyone, you can't see anyone, nothing makes sense, or everything makes sense. And that would really help. So I'm going to introduce our two that we've got, David and Deian. So both from Care and Support West, as I explained. And here we are. Hi, David.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
And hello, Deian.
Hiya, evening, everybody.
So David, I think I'm going to hand over to you, CEO of Care Support West. If you could say a few words, just introduce yourself, and then over to Deian, and then let us know what you're going to talk about, so the future of social care, the new normal, COVID-19. So yeah, David, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Good evening, everybody. For those of you who've come across me before, you may have heard me say that I used to be, as it were, on the other side. I used to be an assistant director in a social services department, not in this century, but in the last century. And that was in the London Borough of Lewisham. So being the chief exec of Care and Support West, it's been interesting to be able to understand quite clearly the pressures and the difficult ways sometimes that local authorities have to work. So that's good. And I've said always along the line that I both challenge and support local authorities, but also challenge and support providers. So I've been around in Care and Support West for a number of years now. Sophie mentioned the awards, which I'd like to highlight. This year, sadly, because of the COVID pandemic, we're postponing it until 2021. But that will be again probably in October 2021, and probably again at Ashton Gate, the football rugby stadium, where it's been for the last 3 or 4 years. Last year we had something like 450 people, guests for the evening, and we were able to present, I think, something like 20 awards to super staff who had been nominated by their either their colleagues or their managers or service users' families and so on. You can see the wee advert there. So that will be in October next year, and that's been really good. By the time we reached a point this year where we had to pull the plug on that for this October, we'd already had somewhere close to 100 nominations. So that will be put across to our 2021 event. The other thing just to mention, again, a postponement, is that we have an annual conference, and this year that was going to be at the UE Education Campus Centre, which actually is now in use as a Nightingale Hospital, I believe, or about to be. So that's also been postponed. At the moment, that looks like it might be postponed to February next year, but we'll see how that goes. Care and Support West, umbrella body, as Sophie has mentioned, across those 4 local authorities. We do a lot else. We do a lot of support on a daily basis. Care, our members phone us. They ask us about a whole range of things. I have a deputy whose background and experience is in HR, so Angela is really helpful in those kinds of things. We run registered managers networks throughout the year, and we also have a contract with Skills for Care to share workforce development funds into organisations who want to have fees or apply for fees to support their own training needs. There's probably a million other things I could say about Care and Support West, but I'll probably leave it there at the moment, Soph.
Great, thank you, David. That's really helpful. Deian, did you want to say a couple of words, and then we'll launch into your first topic?
Yeah, no problem. I'll quickly introduce myself. Deian, I, along with Sophie, we have run Manor Community for the past 10 years. South Gloss and North Somerset, and of Care and Support West for around.
You're a bit darky, Deian, so we're going to just maybe let David continue with the first bit of what you want to say. And we were talking earlier, David, about thinking about what care providers that you support, what they're actually doing at the moment, because there's a lot of talk around care providers just firefighting, but actually they're doing a bit of an amazing job, a lot of them. And I found this on Twitter, actually, that someone posted, and this is about a care team who are camping out in the garden of a care home because they don't want to be out in the community encouraging that community transmission to come into the home. So it's a bit drastic, but I mean, it's still a huge ask. Are you seeing things like that from your members, David?
Yeah, 1 or 2 people are doing that. I heard from one of our care homes recently that people come and they spend the time in the care home. They don't camp in the garden, I don't think, but they come and spend time in the care home. And if you like, they do a week's worth of shifts so that the number of people coming in and out of the care home is significantly reduced, which obviously makes it possible to be much more of a kind of ring-fenced area, hopefully keeping the virus out. That's one of the things that people are doing. One of the things that I have said in various places, both today on Radio Bristol when I talked to them this morning, was that, you know, every day we're invited by central government, the Prime Minister's session, as it were, to stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives. Well, these workers that you're talking about, that we've been talking about earlier, they go to work to protect the NHS and save lives. So they're going into tricky situations. They're going into situations where they don't know whether they're going to be safe. And then, if I can add to that, the whole piece around personal protection equipment, the lack of it. And so, but these workers, they aren't just being brave, they are being heroes to go into this kind of setting in that kind of way. So those people camping in the garden are just an example of many, many sets of staff who are doing that very thing.
Yeah, sorry about that. You cut me in my prime there before. Yeah, so I just wanted to echo David's thoughts, really. And I think for us in the social care sector, stories like that probably aren't a surprise, because the staff working in social care tend to always go over and above and beyond what is necessary. And I think we've always known the stories. I think maybe one of the small positives from the corona virus and the news it's getting for social care is that stories like that are actually going out to the general public now, and not just for the likes of us in our awards ceremonies and things like that. So I think, you know, like I said, I don't think it's a massive surprise of people in it. It's lovely to see, and it's really nice to see that people from outside the social care bubble are actually seeing how great the workforce is, really.
And I just want to add again to that one of the things that we're trying to persuade, I'm thinking now about the temporary COVID uplift money from central government to local authorities. I'm sure people are aware of all of that. The 1.6 million that came out in the first tranche. We hear that there's a second tranche of 1.6 million. Today, interestingly, I heard from another source that in the interim, there's been 1.3 million sent across to CCGs. Now, that's the first time I've heard that today. So I'm going to be chasing that up with BNSSG. Hopefully people will remember what that's about. Bristol, Bath, and I'll just stick with BNSSG.
Bristol, North Somerset,
and South Glos.
South Gloucestershire. Yeah.
It's been a long day, David. Yeah.
Yes, it's been a very long day. And we're going to be, as Care and Support West, we're going to be going back to them and pressuring them about that. One of the things we've written to them just recently, people might want to know, is that we've written to them about the differentiation between state-funded people who get services and private sector, private self-funders, people who get that care delivered to them. And one of the questions that we posed to the 4 local authorities that we're connected to, because it isn't just those 3, it's also Bath and North East Somerset, is how are you going to make sure that all of your citizens, not just those that receive care and be state funded, but all of your citizens are going to benefit from the temporary COVID uplift? Now, you won't be surprised, I haven't received a response yet, but I have heard, for example, from Bristol City Council that they are exploring that, and they think it's a bit tricky to be thinking about, but at the same time, I've also heard from people in the LGA that those kinds of issues are real and live, both in local government, but also in central government. So these are some of the things that we're trying to do in order to support some of those heroes that we've been talking about, who either stay in tents or do a week's worth of shifts at a hit.
David, or maybe Deian, you might want to answer this one. So David, you talked about this money coming through and people who aren't maybe in social care so much or at the provider end, they might think that seems like a lot of money. What's the issue? Why are they having to continue to supply resources like that to the care sector?
Well, the 1.6 billion, yes, is a lot of money. What I can tell you is that between the 4 local authorities that we're interested in, so, you know, North Somerset, Bristol, South Gloss and Baines, between the 4 of them, their share of that 1.6 billion for the first tranche was close to 30 billion or just over 30 billion. So, for example, I think Bristol had 13 point something and South Gloss had 8 point something. So what I'm saying is that that's the kind of money that the councils are looking at, and all of the councils now have written to. And if you haven't received a letter, then please come back to me and let me know that. But all the councils should now have written to all of their providers explaining how they're going to pass that money down to the front line. So some, for example, South Gloucestershire have gone on a percentage level, whereas, for example, Bristol and North Somerset have gone on a model where they're using £100 a week per resident uplift. There's also funding for people who deliver domiciliary care. I'm not sure about supported living. Deian, do you know anything about what's been happening around supported living? I think Bristol also mentioned it, but I'm not sure the others have. Have you heard anything?
I'm pretty sure Bristol put an extra £1 as well. Same with the home care, and I believe North Somerset and South Gloss have done the same. Baines, I am not too sure about.
But the thing that I guess we're not most interested in, but in terms of the issues now, okay, so that was the first tranche of 1.6. I think councils already have a second tranche. The money might already be with them for the second tranche. And what we're now interested in and trying to pressure them on is how are they going to share that one out?
I think the big difficulty is, to answer your question, Soph, is that 1.6 billion, although it sounds like a lot of money, it's probably a fraction of what each council spend on social care annually. And it's actually only given them the ability to give an increase of whether it's 10% or an extra £1 per hour for care calls until the end of May, is what we've been told before it's reviewed. So whilst it sounds like a lot of money, it's actually in the realms of how much money is spent on social care across every local authority. It's actually quite small, and it won't fund any long-term ambitions that the sector has. And also the second, just to go on the second tranche of money, my understanding is that whilst the first tranche of money was for social care specifically, although I think they were only urged to spend it on social care, I don't think it was a legal requirement to spend it all on social care. The second tranche, what we've been informed, informally, if you like, is that it might not be just for social care. That might be to support local authorities who are also taking a huge hit at the moment in terms of their spending and their income. So whilst I'm hopeful, I'm also quite sceptical about how much money there's actually going to be coming over the next few months to actually fund what actually the costs are going to be for providers. Because whilst the 10% uplift sounds like a lot of money, providers' costs have gone through the roof recently, and it doesn't look like they're going to come down anytime soon. And income's also taking a hit. So I don't want to be too much of a pessimist, but I think we have to be wary about that. And I think the fact that social care has been chronically underfunded for so many years, any uplifts are still not really going to be anywhere close to what the true cost of social and good social care is.
But I think one of the things that anybody who's in on this call, who's listening and seeing what we're saying here, one of the best things you can do is individually to be writing to your commissioning authority and asking these very questions. What about self-funders? What about the next tranche of money? Where is the 1.3 million that's gone to CCGs? Where's that sitting? I haven't heard anything from our local BNSSG CCGs about what funds they got or how they plan to spend it. Ask the questions. Tell us you've asked them. Copy us in. This is the way to get people to act.
There you
And
go.
join your local associations.
Yeah, well, yes, do that too.
So you mentioned about co-providers are under a lot of pressure. That's all great. You hear that in the news. But what does that actually mean? What is the financial pressure? What are you not able to do? Is it voids? Is it, I mean, I've got some ideas, but Deian, maybe, you've spoken to a lot of providers recently. We've got a WhatsApp group with people saying we're really worried. I mean, if the care sector goes down, then we've got a problem. What are the actual real problems that people are facing?
Well, because the underfunding in social care, it's been described as a perfect storm for quite some time, and COVID-19 has just given it another kick, if you like. The main issues it's brought up is that voids are now been struggling to be filled because providers rightly are more cautious about who's coming into care homes.
Sorry, or even Deian, sorry to stop you. What's a void?
Yeah. A void is, so if you have a 34-bed care home, for example, and you're full, if someone leaves because they go into hospital for long term or need different sets of care or sadly pass away, that bedroom becomes available for someone else. And until that bedroom is given, if you like, to someone else or contracted to someone else, that is what we call a void. And the main problem with voids is that essentially the provider or whoever owns the homes, the costs will keep on occurring whether people are in those bedrooms or not, if that makes sense. So the income goes against the costs, if you like. So if your income goes down because your voids are getting bigger and bigger because people are, like I said, very, very sadly passing away, or you're not getting people coming into care homes, or you can't take new packages on because you've got a lack of staff because of people off sick, then the costs are carrying on going. But the problem is at the moment is the costs are actually going up as well because the PPE shortage is causing huge uplifts in costs for providers because they're paying far more than what we used to pay for PPE. Some are paying staff more because they have to try and get them to do the work. And obviously there's additional costs in terms of cleaning, infection control, and all sorts like that. So actually, we started the Care Sport West board yesterday, and we're just about to bring a spreadsheet out to ask providers to put in it, essentially, what the additional costs are, so we can go to the local authorities and explain the costs and actually put some figures to them. Because, for example, providers are now having to work more remotely. So where people used to go, whether you're a dom care agency or a care home, you'd be in one place and you might have a few computers there. Everybody now has to work from home more. So there's huge amounts of infrastructure costs and generally trying to communicate with families. So, providers be buying tablets, new applications to try and keep people going, try and keep the care going and to keep the outstanding care that is done going. So that's roughly the cost. I blabbered on a little bit. David, do you want to add some things?
I'll just come in there if I may. I just spotted somebody's comment which said something like, make sure you pay the heroes a hero's wage. Now, when I talked earlier about writing to your local authority, write to your councillors, write to your MPs, and also, as well as asking about the 1.6 million or the 1.3 or all of that kind of thing, because these COVID things it's going to be a period which will, please God, end. and there will come a time when the reality is that the social care sector will look similar to that which it is now in terms of it's not its values, but it's the way people value it and the way in which funds are available to pay care staff appropriately. So now is a time to be actually banging that drum, which we will do in Care and Support West, but it would be helpful if you did it also alongside us with your commissioners, with your senior officers in the council, with your MP and with your local councillors. Let's all try and do that together. Where have you gone, Soph? Oh, there you are.
That's a really good point, David. I wondered whether we could just take a look at a snippet from Andrew Marr on Sunday, just talking to Dominic Raab about care homes and the deaths in care homes. Bit of a depressing subject, but it's interesting to see what his comments are when Andrew Marr brings it up. So I'm going to try this clip. I hope it works. Give it a go. In the comments if you can't hear it or you can't, figure out, can't see it or anything like that.
We only started testing people going back into care homes, I think, about 10 days ago. And it's beginning to look as if what's going on in care homes might be the darkest part of this whole story.
Well, I'm not sure that I'd say it's the darkest, but we've said all along that there is particular vulnerability in care homes. The reason being is you've got large numbers of people over 65 with multiple conditions, and we're waiting for the CQC and the ONS to give us a better handle on the number.
So that was his response, really. I took it as, well, you've got a lot of the most vulnerable people in one place, so of course you're going to have a lot of deaths. It sounded a little bit too dismissive and lack of empathy for my liking. I don't know what you both thought.
It's interesting that quite often over time, when older people have fallen, lots of views around that is, well, they're old, they would fall, wouldn't they? And it's very clear from other work that's been done that depending on how you manage an older person's health and make sure that all of those things are put in place appropriately, people don't fall simply because they're old. They fall for all sorts of other reasons. Now, the same model, if you like, applies to this pandemic now. People aren't dying because they're old necessarily. They may be dying earlier because they are. What we know about COVID is that if you have underlying health conditions, perhaps one or more, you're more at risk of being hit by COVID. So there's that. It is also the case that what worries me is that people pay the numbers game. And, you begin to compare, well, how many people died in hospital and how many people died in care homes? And people get into this area of, oh, gosh, lots of people are dying in care homes. Well, the fact of the matter is that there's something like, I don't know what the figures are, but, 450,000 people or so in care homes. And there could be somewhere near, not near that number, but a large number of people in our area in care homes. And when you then look at how many people have died, I had some figures this morning when I did the BBC Radio Bristol stuff. They sent me some figures beforehand. And care home deaths involving COVID across the Bristol, Bains, South Gloss and North Somerset were 106. And care home deaths, all causes in those same areas, were 242. Now, that was a period between April 10 and April 25. Now, yes, those are large numbers, but what people fail to do is look back a year and see in an I'm not trying to underplay this, but in an ordinary year, how many people are likely to die from a range of different results or range of different reasons, and people fail to do that. They do the number game between who dies in hospitals and who dies in old people's homes, and then relate that in some way that isn't helpful, in my view.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, David, and I think all the points you've made are perfectly valid. So I'm not going to come back to you on them. But I think what the government is saying, what Dominic Raab said there is fundamentally nonsense, because had they actually taken care homes and the care and social, and not just care homes, social care, the social care sector, and actually had that at the forefront of their minds at the start of this pandemic, we wouldn't have had local authorities threatening providers to take away packages if they didn't take people straight from hospitals without, even though providers were saying, frankly, that it wasn't safe to do so without testing. Because once you take someone from a hospital with coronavirus and you put them in a care home, that and quite often small care homes with not huge amounts of social distancing possible, you're always going to get a chronic outbreak, fundamentally. And the fact now they've changed their tact and everybody's now getting tested shows to me that either they didn't have it on the forefront of the mind, or the plan to begin with wasn't right. And the changes in guidances we've had, providers are now getting guidance, and sometimes staff are seeing guidances going out on the news before even providers know about it, to be able to provide guidance to the staff about the new guidances. So the lack of planning, the lack of structure, and the lack of clarity from the government, I don't believe care homes has been, and it's, like I said, it's a big news story now, it's care homes, it's care homes, it's care homes, because of the numbers, David, like you said. But it's the social care sector. It's not just, social care sector is far more than just care homes.
Yeah.
Far more people get care in their own homes than they do in care homes. And I think it's, a lot of that is down to the media, the general media as well, which they have to answer questions on. But I don't think it's right that they'd had the care homes at the front, because, like I said, the policy of sending people out without testing and sending staff in without any tests and things is quite,
and
it is a shocking legacy, really. Yeah.
And the other thing to add alongside that is there are no numbers, for example, about people in a care home who may have had COVID, who are supported and cared and come through out the other side and still are living in a care home. No figures about that. We're looking at a one-sided set of figures, it seems to me.
Okay, I have a not so fun fact. I was on a call this after our call that we have at 12, and there was someone asked, where are they getting the figures for the deaths that are being reported for staff in care homes? And what was said, I mean, this isn't official, was that they, as in the government, are basically just pulling those figures from the media. So they don't really know how many care staff have died, and that's just in care homes. And there's a bit of I felt a tinge of it in the clip, really. Well, you kind of expect it to be happening almost, and a bit of disregard for social care. I mean, social care is our thing. I have the care badge in this little packet here. I haven't worn it because I forgot to tell you two to wear it. So I didn't want to wear it and take the moral high ground and then make you two look the odd ones out. But it's the image we need to pick up social care a bit, to put it in simple terms. But I think that just shows the lack of understanding at government level of how social care works. And I don't believe that ministers and really understand it. It is a difficult, and it's a huge beast to understand. And if you don't work in it, it is actually very difficult to understand it. And I think that's part of the problem. And hopefully the more publicity it gets, people will start understanding it a little bit more, but hopefully not just the negative points that have been raised in the media. Talking about part of the problem, and part of the problem maybe starting from the top. I know lots of people have seen this clip, but I'm going to try and play another clip, partly because I don't know, it's just one of those. And also I do want to still carry on testing the tech. So bear with me a second. I'm going to show another one for comments.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody, you'll be pleased to know, and I continue to shake hands and I think it's very important that we, people obviously can make up their own minds. I think that Matt has said that people must make up their own minds, but I think the scientific evidence is, well, I'll hand over to the experts, but our judgment is wash. Washing your hands is the crucial thing. Yes. Before you shake hands, obviously.
Okay.
Classic
this was on
Boris.
the 3rd of March.
Well, it's just classic Boris, yeah.
Yeah, wash your hands before you pick your baby up.
Troubling though. I mean, we can laugh.
Yeah, we probably should say we're glad that he's now on the mend and doing well. I think.
Oh yeah, that as well.
But again, that just goes to show the lack of direction from the government on the coronavirus. It was all very much bravado. We'll get through it, and I think most of the country probably thought we wouldn't get into a state that we all looked at Italy and thought, oh, we'll never be that bad. Those Italians, those Europeans, they know what they're doing, etc., etc. You heard a lot of comments like, we'll never get that bad in the UK, and I think we were oblivious to it. And we now find ourselves in probably a worse predicament, or just as bad as everybody else, because surprise, surprise, the UK is not unique in dealing with viruses, and we're no better or no worse probably than everybody else. And
well, we're a lot worse than the likes of Germany and other places where they went really early, and New Zealand and places that took it by the balls of the horn and said, right, now this is lockdown, do it. But we're talking a lot about coronavirus here. So, I mean, we also wanted to talk about cultural change and moving on. Do you think we should begin to do that now?
Absolutely. I was going to go on to that next. So we've talked about some of the issues and some of the things that are going on. And like you said, that, we've titled this Midweek Whine with a W about, COVID-19, the new normal for social care. How have you two seen things change? I mean, I've been on a lot of calls where they've said we really wanted to work collaboratively in social care between health and social care, and that hasn't happened. But within overnight, we're doing things that we've been trying to do for 2-3 years. What do you think has changed now? And maybe we'll go on to what are the good bits we need to take forward?
Well, I want to first of all have people acknowledge my great age, and tell you that the first thing I heard ever about joining up health and social care was the Community Care Act in 1989, when I was an assistant director in Lewisham. And there's part of me that's absolutely mortified that in 2000 and whatever we're still having that discussion. However, the thing that really concerns me is that although, yes, the care badge you mentioned there, Sophie, by the way, mine's in my office, which is in Bristol. I'm not there, so I can't wear it. But the thing that really concerns me is that in spite of all the stuff around social care as being acknowledged differently and so on and so forth, despite all of that, when this kind of dies away, we're going to be straight back to where we were previously, which is second rate and somewhere in the middle distance. And what I want to say now, today, is that what we have to do is dine out on what's happening now, use it to pressurize the kinds of people that need to be pressurized, and ensure that people would be embarrassed to go back to what was previously the case. We need to embarrass people into doing what they should already have been doing for the last 20 or 30 years, but use what's going on now as our peg upon which to hang it. Am I going too far there, Dan? I don't know.
No, because we've had this conversation before. Well, not this exact conversation, but a similar conversation. And I echo your thoughts in terms of the positivity and grabbing in the bulls by the horns, if you like. But I think the pessimist in me will suggest that whilst it's a new story at the moment, whether it'll still be a new story and whether we'll actually learn the lessons. And I think the only thing, and a positive we should take from this virus as a social care sector and as a nation, is that, from my point of view, you always learn bigger lessons when you've made huge mistakes. And I think hopefully the people will see the massive mistakes we've done with social care and the funding and the way it's structured, essentially. And hopefully people will soon realise that it has to change and will change. And it has been really encouraging to see, the calls we have every Wednesday and seeing so many health colleagues on there. Even the conference this year, I think it was starting to become a little better with, even our annual conference was going to be jointly hosted with BSSNG this year as well. So there has been a lot of work towards it. But certainly this has kick-started it and put it at the forefront of everybody's minds. I do hope that we do see a long-term, because the problem we've got in social care is there is no short-term fix. It is a long-term. It needs to be clearly thought out. It needs to be a clear structure, a clear funding stream. And I'm not convinced that it's good that it is becoming a political football to a degree, but the problem with being a political football is that it'll get bounced around for a long time before anything actually gets done.
Okay, but I want to add, we should be pessimist and optimist then.
Yes.
Perhaps it's my
Good
age.
combination.
I can be more optimistic because of my age. One of the things I wanted to say was people are not exactly queuing up, but they are doing things like asking why they haven't been invited onto the Wednesday call, the comms calls that Coproduce Care and Care and Support West are doing. The directors are saying, hang on a minute, you haven't asked me, and we've now had all 4 of the local authorities directors on. We've had 2 councillors, we've had 2 MPs. People are keen. What I'm saying is we need to find a way of making that grow and emerge as being what's usual and normal, as opposed to something that's only done at a particular time when people are not panicking exactly. Well, people are panicking, but local authorities need to understand, as do our health colleagues, that, as I said earlier, without social care, the NHS would fall over. Without the NHS, social care would fall over. I understand but that, we need somehow or another to find a way of driving that. And I think that the likes of Care and Support West and the providers with us in membership can actually, I use the word again, embarrass the people who make decisions into making the right decisions over time. And now that's going to take some time, and it'll take all of us coming back again and again and again and again and not giving up. That seems to me to be how we will get, and using those counsellors that we've met with, the directors of adult social services we've met with, the 2 MPs, more MPs, using them, and being, we don't need to be shy about using them. Let's use them. Let's help them see why they need to make sure that different decisions are made up in Whitehall.
Okay, so I have gone out and I've asked people to ask questions. We've got a great question, which is exactly what I've been asking to myself this afternoon. So Rob Lees, I think you might know Rob Lees, David. He says it is great to have these questions. It is great to criticize and to think about getting answers for PPE, getting explanations. But we've always known that social care is in a difficult position. Is now the right time to be doing all of this, asking for more, being the critic? Because staff are working really hard. Is this the right time?
Well, I think
does Rob make a suggestion about what the right time would be?
Well, Dave, or Deian, maybe Deian, you come in for.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was reading his post when David was talking, and I think it's a point he makes. I think it's important to say that this is not the time really to just ear bash and just say, "Oh, we told you so. We need more money." Blah blah blah. I think what I've been trying to say, hopefully throughout the thing, is that we will not go back straight away to how it was anyway. It's not possible. The costs, the way we will have to do social care for the next few months, because the COVID is going to be around for months and months and months, and possibly will reappear again next year, or another virus might come along again. There will be a new normal. I think Nicola Sturgeon coined that one a couple of weeks ago, and the new normal will have to have a clearer structure and a clear plan for social care, well, for the nation in general, but also for social care, about how we work together, how we fund, because funding is a big part of it. It's not the only part of it, but it is important, and how the structure works, how we interact together from social care and health, because it is meant to be health and social care together. So it's not the time to ear bash and just have a go at people, but it is the time to act and to really play a part in how social care should be changed, both in the short term to deal with coronavirus, but also long term, because otherwise we're going to be sitting here 10 years time having the same comments and the same issues, and that's just not on. And like I said earlier, you have to learn the lessons, and we were already on the brink in terms of social care sector before the coronavirus. The coronavirus has pushed it over the edge, and we need a clear plan to go forward. But we do all have to work together. It's not about.
No, I've just been seeing. I've suddenly found how you see live comments. I'm learning as well.
It's been updated slightly as well, David. I don't know if you see.
Okay,
I think there was an issue with, we just need stuff now. There isn't even any time to think about lobbying for other stuff. We're spending all our time looking for PPE, rather than thinking how we can kind of just lobby local authorities or MPs.
Well, no, I understand that, and that's what Care and Support West is here for, because we understand that you need to continue doing that. Day on day on day on day, you've got things to do that Care and Support West, between us, we're not delivering care, so we don't have to. We're not doing that kind of thing, but we can lobby on your behalf, and we're happy to do that. So I wanted just to say I'm not trying to be critical of all of those people like councillors and senior officers and MPs. What I'm trying to say is we need to have a conversation between us and them that continues to explore how it all can be different, so that we work together. And that's, I commented about the Community Care Act of 1989. That's what it said it wanted to do. And, maybe now is the time to do that, so that you can use your association, if you want to be doing that, to be doing that voice for you, because you've got other and daily more important things to be doing.
Right. To be fair, David, as well, when you speak to councillors, commissioning managers, head directors of commissioning at local authorities, and also even MPs, off the record, when you speak to them, they know the sector's broken. They're not. They also want to play a part in fixing it. So, like I said, it's not a case of us against them. It's everybody involved in social care who works in social care knows it's not working. And I think just because you're in a rut at the moment doesn't mean you just leave long things and you just kick them out, because you're just kicking problems further down the road. You have to deal with the here and now, so you do have to have an eye of the future.
Okay, great. Before we go on to, if anyone does have any questions or wants us to talk about anything else, then do just comment. But I thought now we've done a kind of near term, middle term. What about the long term? Where should social care go after COVID? I mean, we made some notes when we talked earlier. Deian, you talked about, which is something I'm passionate about, parity of esteem for health and social care. So that's like people talk about parity of esteem between mental health and physical health, where you see, a broken leg as just as an immediate thing that needs to be supported as somebody who's having a mental health breakdown. But in this case, we're talking about the two sectors and seeing them equally, either as one. I mean, I started a petition which needs a lot more signatures. If you want to, I'll put it in the comments actually. But just for Parliament to talk about seeing health and social care as one. And then maybe anything else you want to talk about. But I mean, I know I'm quite cautious about the whole, one team idea, even though I do kind of push it on social media, because some people think, well, social care needs to look and feel and be more like the NHS, but actually it's got some fantastic values and wonderful people who are skilled, not low skilled, who we don't necessarily want it to look like the NHS. We want it to keep its own identity, but also just so people just maybe look at pay pensions for care workers, like someone said earlier on Facebook on the chat. What do you think about that? Maybe David, you have some comments or thoughts.
I think my first comment is that I want to talk about parity between social care and health, not health and social care. I think we need to be, you might think I'm being silly, but I think there's something about how we word these things and the language we use. And it's about, I'm not wishing to put social care above health, but what I am saying is, for the first time in a long time, perhaps we should be saying parity between social care and health. I note with interest on some of the comments here that somebody was saying the normal will continue as long as we've got a capitalist ethos, and we need to think about having a society and world that ultimately serves its people. It's a systems thing, to my mind, says whomsoever that was at 7:49. And I think there's some of that discussion, some of that context, some of that, if you like, world view could be some of the discussions that we have with senior officers and councillors and MPs, because it's about drawing the discussion outside of what's happening now and putting it into a context of where people have to think. They have to think carefully about, so what kind of a service do you want in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, Mr. MP, Mr. Councillor, Mrs. whomsoever. And I think we have to, if we don't bring that to the table, it is a truth that local authorities, I know because I worked in them, are very silo oriented, and they get driven by their local authority members, who are driven by votes and so on. You know, we all know that, but I think there's something about making sure there's a better and more grown-up discussion goes on about what it looks like in the future. I'm now possibly going to step off my soapbox, but the views will still remain.
Okay, Deian, any comments?
No, I think David's put his point across. I think, and even I'm just looking at the comments now, and everybody will have their opinion about how it will work. And I think what needs to happen is a grown-up conversation about, you know, what it should look like. I do believe that they should remain separate, health and social care, but they should work together a lot more. But we do need a grown-up conversation about how social care should work going forward, and the nation needs to be educated and then decide what they want to do with social care and how they want to fund it, because more and more people will be affected by social care going forward. They have been over the years, and that'll carry on going. And I think it's important that people are educated to understand the system and to decide, you know, because ultimately it's a political decision who you want to. But you know, politics and political parties need to decide and give a clear direction of where they think they should travel on social care, and then people will vote with their feet, won't they, or vote with their pens in terms of who they believe. But it's, like I said, it's a long-term thing. I don't. There's no easy answer, and I think, you know, funding is a big issue. I think people will have to pay more tax for it. As simple as that, as far as I'm concerned.
And in addition to that, we talked about this before when you and I, Dan, and also you, Sophie, have spoken about this previously. There requires a cultural shift in people's thinking about, and I don't want you to think I'm jesting now, but lockdown has brought myself and my wife to be looking at a box set of Downton Abbey, and I just wanted to say that. For us, yeah. But if sometimes you see some things in things like that make you think, Okay, so there was an incredible cultural shift that went on. It should have been quicker, shouldn't have been like it in the first place. You can have all sorts of views about that. But I think that's the kind of discussion that we need to be having about resetting, as we've entitled the last bit of our discussion here, resetting adult social care post-COVID-19. It is about a cultural shift, both in terms of, not in terms of belief system. I'm very clear in my mind that there are equal value belief systems in health and social care. I've got no doubt in my mind about that. People work in those areas because they believe in what they do. And I don't think there's any differentiation that I'd want to make between that. But there's a cultural shift needs to be made at senior management and above about how those things change. And I think it's beholden on the likes of us to bring that to the table and make it be discussed to bring about some kind of shift.
That's very interesting. I like that. I also noticed in the comments, somebody talked about, I can't find it now, but they did say about a bit political, going into political theory. You know, if we're going to do if the new normal continues based on a capitalist ethos, then social care will fade back to where it was. So they think that what the reflection needs to be is on whether we want a society and a world that ultimately serves its people. It's a systems thing, to my mind. I think that's a really good point, because there's a bigger debate to be had. And I've, you know, on the YouTube, you'll find we've had interviews with people like Alex Fox from Shared Lives, and he has written a great book talking about how we reconceptualize social care and doing things differently. You've got the shared lives schemes, if anybody knows about that. You can find we did a video with him. It's really, really interesting what he talks about. It's a whole discussion about, you know, how we do social care. Are care the right places for our older loved ones to live in? Some people would say, you know, well, what else are we going to do? Other people would say, no, they're just like warehouses for older people. I mean, there's a huge discussion to be had, I think, and it shouldn't be rushed and grabbed at, you know, in a few years' time when there's an election and people just firefighting to make the quickest soundbite politically to get clickbait. I think this is a great discussion. If we have more of these discussions, that more people could do these type of discussions to talk about it in more detail, so that when the time comes when we properly sit down and review things, and we're talking about the future now, aren't we? Not now, in a few years' time, we as in everybody who's not even in social care has a better idea of the options, and people can make a more informed decision. I think there's a place for that. It's a really, really good question. Deian, do you have anything to add before there was another question I thought was good as well?
No, it's just like the point was well made there, and I think that's half the problem, isn't it? If it becomes a political football, we won't have the change that we need, because the NHS has also got its own issues, and the reason why that hasn't been reformed and it's not working as well as it should be is because it is a political football. There isn't a clear. It needs to sort of move outside of the political spectrum to a point, because we need to have a definitive goal of where we see ourselves. I agree with the posts to a point, maybe not all of it, but you know, we do need to have a goal as a society, as a nation, where we want social care, the health sector as well, to look like in 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time. Because until you know where you want to be, it's very difficult to make changes to it, because you know, whatever change you make, what's the purpose of it? I think that's the problem. There needs to be so much change that it's easier just to move it on. I think that's always been. I think that's been the problem for the past few years, and I think I'm worried that it's still going to remain a problem. I'm hopeful that, you know, the current climate means that it won't be.
Okay, I mean, a phrase that comes to mind is duty of care, and I think people who are in responsible arenas like local authorities need to be reminded of the reality of a duty of care, which is about all their citizens. We go back to where we started a bit, where, you know, what about self-funders against state-funded? I don't want to return to that, but what I'm saying is that if we are going to make a cultural shift, then we have to believe in a duty of care, and we have to deliver in the context of that, and things have to change in order to make that not just a possibility, but an actuality. Oh, Sophie, your voice is gone.
Have I
Can
gone?
I hear you? Are you back? Are you
No,
back?
you're back.
Sorry, I lost connection something. Okay, that was really helpful. I've just got a question here, a last one, I think, before we close off. So someone's saying, you know, what benefits are the staff going to get with local authorities giving extra for care? Now, this is another fab question. So to my mind, I remember when I was looking at a tender for local, it was a package of a care that was quite large, and there were staff that were going to be 2P'd, and some of them were on a local authority on a health contract, so with the NHS. And when I looked at their contracts, there was fantastic sick pay, 6 months full paid. There was the pension was wonderful, and I thought, in social care, I know a lot of people just can't offer that to our staff. So when we talk about benefits, we're talking about why this from my point of view. I mean, David, you'll have a view, and Deian, when he pops back on, I'll just add him in.
I'm back, sorry.
Yeah, we're just talking about those benefits for staff. So I was talking about pensions, I was talking about sick pay, I was talking about holiday, all of those. I mean, it's monetary, but it makes a huge difference to each individual. So to answer that question from that person, I can't see their name on my view, but David, would you agree?
I would agree. I mean, one of the challenges that I have, of course, is that I'm not an employer, so and haven't been for a very, very long time. So I think that Dan's view will perhaps be nearer the reality than mine. But clearly, you know, people, the shorthand that people use is, you know, do you want to work in care or do you want to stack shelves in Sainsbury's? And that shouldn't be, those things shouldn't be on a par.
Yeah.
There needs to be a significant difference. I'm just trying to remember, you can help me probably, the stand-up comedian who's Welsh, who's just done a program about working in care. Rod
Gilbert.
Now,
Yes.
I just absolutely suggest to people that they find that and look at it. It's an amazing piece. There's a lot of comedy in it too. But one of the things he says is, well, now that I've done this, I can't think of any other job that's as important and as difficult and as challenging as this. And, you know, people are getting either, you know, the minimum wage, and it just can't be right. So, but what that brings, as Sophie, you've just mentioned, what that brings with it is change and shift and difference about filtering money down through to local authorities who can then pay differently to providers so that they can pay differently. So it's a chain reaction. But Dan, you're nearer that than me.
Yeah, are we on the question about what benefits the staff going to get with local authorities giving extra? Yeah, I think it's a fair point, to be honest with you. And I think, you know, some authorities, I think, are saying that, well, part of the problem we've got, if we go back to the beginning, is that the funding and the way the wages generally have increased, albeit minimum wage, fully accept that, have increased over the past 10 years. The funding that or the increase, the uplifts that the authorities given over the years have not even come close to matching those costs for providers. And there is a tipping point, and it's pretty close to it. And the reason why a lot of care companies are going to be going to the wall, because some will go to the wall over the next few months, I'll be surprised if they don't, is because there isn't huge amounts of money in care companies' pockets. And I'm sure some people will say, well, people be taking money out, etc., etc. But I think fundamentally, when you look at private companies or charities, because there's plenty of charities the same thing, charities tend to pay pretty much the same as what the private companies pay. The the margins are very tight. And I think most providers, if you spoke to them, and most providers, when they do go and speak to local authorities about uplifts, a lot of it is about paying staff better, because, you know, most providers, and most business owners, I think generally, certainly good ones anyway, don't want to pay their staff well, because, you know, staff that feel valued, you know, it's not just about pay, don't get me wrong, but staff who do feel valued and are paid for that will ultimately most likely be better staff. Now, at the moment, we're getting staff that are really doing really well and going above and beyond.
Okay. I note a point here that says care workers and shelf stackers are holding this country together right now, and neither should be on minimum wage jobs. I agree.
That's a wonderful point, I think, to end this on. Yes.
I fully agree with the testament. Yeah.
What I would say is thank you to you both. I really hope that it was okay, that everyone heard everything okay. If you had any problems, then do get in touch, because feedback is great. We're going to do this one is called Midweek Wine. I did do a play on that, so that you could have a glass of wine on a Wednesday on a midweek if you wanted to, and have an excuse to do that. I was hoping to have it sip one throughout this, but I was just so tense about the tech, I didn't. Had a cup of tea instead. But I would say thank you to everyone who's actually joined us and joined in the conversation. We've had loads of fantastic comments. That's really helped. And of course, as David and Deian has said, if you want to know more about Care and Support West, there's their website there along the bottom. And obviously you can follow them also on Twitter. Moving on to tomorrow.
Just before you do so, can you let us know how many people were connected? Do you know that?
I think we had about 29 at the most.
That's nice.
It was a nice one for this test. Kind of ringing around last minute, trying to get people to come on so that we can test everything, and we pretty much have, actually. So that's great. So
well, you'll have bigger hitters going forward. So I'm sure you'll get more people joining.
Yeah, before everyone disappears, I just want to say about tomorrow. So tomorrow, if you on Facebook, then I think you can click on the star or something and like this. But if you're on YouTube, then if you subscribe when you click the bell, you will be able to find out what we're bringing up tomorrow, which, like I said, is Belinda Schwer, who will be talking about the Care Act easement. So a bit more legal, but she's extremely passionate about what she's talking about. You will learn heaps. There won't be any slides, because as you get, the format of this is a little bit more casual, but I would recommend, if you're in the care sector, just having a pen and paper. I mean, you can, well, these are recorded and you can watch back, but she's going to be talking about some of the local authorities who have implemented these easements, which change the duties that they have to provide assessments under law. And that has caused a lot of chat on Twitter last week, when they really got exposed for that, which, I mean, they're allowed to do it, but it's whether they've done it right and legally, and other stuff plus. So tomorrow, 7:00, put it in your diary. Please tune in. Again, join in the chat. Let us know how you're getting on with it, and give us your comments and questions. If you don't know what the easements are, then come with your questions and she will be answering them. So yes, thank you both to David and to Deian. Thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you enjoyed it. Share it, encourage other people to get involved, and hopefully we can make this a thing and a wider discussion. So thank you very much all. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Okay, bye.